Hey everyone, Jason here for Mindset Monday number 14. Today we're talking about the fact that the answer usually lies somewhere in the middle. So in my last video I talked about the fact that opinions are not facts. They're just opinions. And when it comes to political parties or whether or not we should have more or less government regulations or gun control or whether or not social media is a good thing or a bad thing, people typically have very strong stances. They're either very for something or very against something. It's not very common you find people that believe that there's a happy middle ground, but one thing I've realized is that that's usually where the answer is. There's no sense in debating people if they're unwilling to acknowledge the fact that there's a middle ground and there's a compromise that needs to be made. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So when it comes to any of those highly debated government policies, people take hard stances one way or another. So take, for example, whether or not people believe that the government should increase or decrease funding for social services. So people that are maybe on disabilities, or whether or not healthcare should be provided by the government. People either believe that should drastically be increased, and the government spending for social services should be basically limitless and everybody should be supported in every way possible. Or you believe the polar opposite and you think all of the projects like that should be defunded because it's an extreme burden on the tax system, which means people are taxed heavily and have a hard time affording to live. So, of course, both sides are wrong. Both sides have valid points on that argument. We do need social programs. However, it can't be a blank check that would essentially bankrupt the country. So there is a middle ground. Typically, when you have extremes in one direction or the other, there's some very negative consequences that you have to look at. So if there's something that's very beneficial about a particular topic, or something very beneficial about a policy, an extreme version of that policy doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be more beneficial. And in extreme examples, those policies can have very drastic repercussions. So a good example of that was the COVID-19 lockdowns. Obviously, it was a very drastic reaction to essentially lock everybody in their homes, shut down all businesses, and force everybody into isolation. That was a very extreme direction to react. And the consequences of that were domestic abuse was up, divorces were up, substance abuse problems were up. People were getting unhealthy because they were locked in their house. They couldn't go to a gym. They were binge eating. People lost motivation because they didn't have jobs. So the mental health aspect took a huge suffering blow due to the extreme policy of the isolation that everyone was forced into. So there's always a yin and a yang. There's always a consequence and a benefit. So finding a balance isn't just important when it comes to things like political parties or government policies. It's also something that you should apply in your own personal life. So you should live a well-balanced life. We've all heard that before. That can be things from your diet. Obviously, extremes usually don't work out well for people. I know people that have gone on, sugar-free diets or meat-only diets. And in reality, they should probably just be focusing on eating well-balanced diets, everything in moderation. Same with spending your money versus saving your money. You probably shouldn't save every single penny you make. You're going to lead a pretty boring life. However, spending every single penny you make is going to leave you in a pretty rough financial situation. So there needs to be a happy medium. The answer isn't an extreme in either direction. So that's the message of today's story, is the answer is somewhere in the middle. Don't assume that more of something is going to be always better or less of something is going to be better. There needs to be a happy medium, and that's where balance comes from. you should focus on that. Thanks for watching.